Can you hear me? Testing, one, two, three. It's always like laggy for me, but when I watch my lives again, I'm like, oh, it wasn't laggy for you guys because you guys caught all of that. And now it's on the internet forever. Can you guys hear me? Hello. Okay. Okay, it's working. Um, Hi, welcome to the Culty Cup of Coffee. I don't even know what number we're on, but it's probably almost to the 200s by now, every single Sunday, live. How are you guys? Today I did plan for this live stream, and I have a few key pointers for anyone who's spending the holiday season alone or not with family, because I'm a level 12 expert in that. No, but for real, I've been out of my I left the order about 11 years ago, and that's when I was kind of cut off. Since then, things have been a little better, but it was still like a stab to the heart when my mom said that I couldn't come back to the family unless I came back to the order. So it was just a very well known thing that I wasn't coming home for Christmas. I'm not invited for the Thanksgivings, and um, that's a really hard thing to go through, especially, I was 17 when she told me that. And so my first Christmas without the family was 18. I was 18 years old. And it's hard, especially when it's a decision that you didn't get to make. So I'm just going to share some of the things that have helped me over the years and how to actually really enjoy the holidays rather than feeling, because I think for a lot of us, it's like, you don't think about it necessarily until it's like thrown in your face around the holidays, right? Like social media is like showing all these happy families and all the things you don't have. And so it just reminds you of those things. And I linked down below some videos that I think are helpful. And then I also put some Harvard studies that we're going to be talking about a little bit of like the brain's plasticity and then also toxicity in the brain. So we'll talk about that in a second, but I'm gonna say hi to all of you guys. How are you? Hi, Caitlin. Hi, Roseanne. Hi, Mary. Hi, Prudence. Roseanne, Irina, Sarah, Melanie, Val's here. I gotta give you your present. I keep telling him, like, I have your present. I'm just trying to build it up. Just kidding. That's actually probably not good because then it's going to be so much of a build up. Then you get it and you're like, oh, thanks. Cool. Hello, Melanie, Clive, Patty. Hi, hi, hi. I mean, I don't assume all of you guys are having these issues with the holidays, but I do think that this stuff can help whenever there's that seasonal depression. So hopefully this video does someone some good. I think it will do me some good because I struggle at least a little bit every year. Like we just had Thanksgiving and no, I didn't spend it with my with my adopted family, and that was nice. But yeah, there's a lot of expectations I think that don't need to be there. There's a lot of societal things that are kind of thrown at us that we really don't we just need to be worried about if we're benefiting and we're happy. And that's all that really matters. But it's hard. It's hard when there's a lot to factor in. Oh, thank you, Denise. She's gifting memberships. How sweet. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Okay, so I love my new chosen family that me and my husband celebrate holidays with. Yeah, see, and so there I think there's I'm gonna touch on this just a little bit. There's like this weird pressure too for those of us who are allowed home for Christmas and holidays, but the family situation's kind of toxic. There's this pressure to go spend the holidays with them, even though it makes us feel like crap. And a lot of us feel like selfish if we don't want to spend the holidays with the family, or we feel like we're ruining Christmas by not wanting to be burdened by, grandma's racist remarks or mom's homophobic conversations or whatever it is. I'm just throwing out things that I feel like are kind of common during the holiday seasons, but we're supposed to just put up with them because it's family, and you're considered kind of selfish or rude to not just put up with it during the holiday season, which I disagree with. I think that the holiday season should be something that you enjoy, not something that you can't wait till it's over. So let's first talk about, though. So I posted 2 videos. They're just like short YouTube videos on how to like survive the holidays alone. Like if you do choose to be alone or choose to not be around family, it can be, or if it's been chosen for you, it can be something that might be a little bit difficult, especially if it's the first time doing it. So I'm just going to kind of quote a few things that were in these videos, and you're welcome to watch them if you want more ideas. But I think one thing that actually helped me with coping with the seasons is there's something that you enjoy. There's always some things that you enjoy about the holiday seasons, whether it's the snow or hot chocolate, ice skating, the Christmassy spirit. There's got to be something that you enjoy, and to just kind of focus on those things or write those things down and make sure that you get to go do those things and enjoy those things, because the holidays are for you too. It doesn't have to be for the toxic family only. So getting to go out there and enjoy those things, whatever they may be, if it's snowboarding, skiing. What else do you do in the holidays? So listing those things that you like about the holidays and making sure that you're going to do them. Also, listing things about yourself that you're thankful for. I know everyone's like, well, write down what you're thankful for because there's so much to be thankful for. And sometimes I feel like it's condescending, and I don't know why. That's probably my own battle that I need to figure out. But instead of being like, oh, I'm thankful that, the sky's blue, writing down things that you're thankful for yourself, thankful about yourself. Like, I've grown so much. I've learned this, I graduated college, or I got my degree, or I was able to move to a new city, and I was able to make these new friends, or I'm able to grow beyond what I was in this point, or just patting yourself on the back and finding things that you're thankful about yourself, and kind of building yourself up in this time of depression that a lot of us go through. There's a lot of at least for me, I feel like I'm very critical of myself around this time because there is a lot of expectations of what I'm supposed to be doing for the holidays. And so I compare myself to other people and I criticize myself, whereas we should just be looking inward and being thankful for how far we've come in life and how much progress we've made. But also being honest with yourself too, like just being truly honest with yourself and giving yourself the space to be vulnerable with yourself and loving yourself. Just be real with yourself. If you can't be real with anyone else, be real with yourself. So, what's her name? Mel Robbins. She's a little more like, this is a video that I have down below. She's a little bit more like pushy with her, aggressive is the word. She's more aggressive with like, stay off social media during the holidays, which I agree with. Like, if you can help it and you're noticing that social media is giving you a negative impact during the holiday season, try to limit it. I know you can have on the iPhone, you can time yourself and say like, alert me if I've been on social media for an hour. And that can be easier than just cold turkey, like deleting all the apps, but limiting your time on social media or deleting the apps, whatever one works for you, because sometimes social media, honestly, almost all the time, social media can make us just compare ourselves and get depressed. And social media is not real. All these people that look like perfect little families, like there's always stuff going on that we don't know about because they're not posting about it. So to think that this picture is actually the reality is not true, but our brains want that. We want that perfect little family that's not real. So she also talks about in her video to amp up the self-care at this time, which can be hard. Both videos said do not isolate, and that's a hard one, right? Especially for people like us who want to isolate and just want to be able to like be sad alone, and then we can come back and hopefully be a better version of ourselves, which can sometimes take longer when you're isolating. But so she talks about amping up the self-care and exercising every day, which sometimes it does feel like it's harder to take care of yourself when you are in these seasonal depressions of the holidays, and you kind of just want to go into hibernation until everything's over. But I really, really agree with what she was saying about Even if you can just get out and go exercise or get out and do things that can give you the endorphins, because sometimes you can trick your brain into being happy and then you actually will be happy. But I'm going to say this again. So they talk about not isolating, and I have a theory. I have a theory that those of us who are raised in this, like, with the toxic stress and a toxic environment where we couldn't trust our caretakers, or our caretakers were the ones that were supposed to be taking care of us, but they were actually the ones abusing us. Those of us who were raised in that kind of a lifestyle as kids, we gravitate, this is just my theory, but I believe it to be true, we're going to gravitate more towards isolation because in the past, right, in our childhood, we couldn't trust people, and it almost seemed like isolating was the best option, because when we isolated or made ourselves scarce, we maybe got abused less, we got less toxic things happening to us because we just ran away and isolated. And I think those of us who did that as kids kind of do that as habits as adults, because it worked as kids, right? So why wouldn't it work as an adult? But if you're an adult with healthy relationships, that's not the thing to do, because if you have access to the healthy friendships, then that's what you're going to want to be around during these times, instead of isolating and making it worse. And I want to just dive into a little bit more of the toxic stress. I put a link for the Harvard study on toxic stress if you want to read along with me. So it talks about how there's positive stress, tolerable stress, and toxic stress. So maybe I'll brief on, because at first I was like, what's positive stress? How is that a thing? But positive stress response is a normal and essential part of healthy development, characterized by brief increases in heart rate and mild elevations in hormone levels. Some situations that might trigger a positive stress response are the first day with a new caregiver, or receiving immunizations, flu shot. So like that's like a healthy response. But then we have toxic stress response, which is what I was talking about. It can occur when a child experiences strong, frequent, and or prolonged adversity, such as physical or emotional abuse, chronic neglect, caregiver has substance abuse or mental illness, exposure to violence, and or the accumulated burdens of family economic hardships. So basically, like this kind of prolonged activation of the stress response system can disrupt the development of the brain and other organ systems, and actually can increase the risk of stress-related diseases, cognitive impairments, yada, yada, yada. And you can read more about that in this Harvard study on toxic stress. But my theory is that those of us who've had a lot of that will isolate, because when we went to a caregiver, our care was not given. You know what I mean? So if you know that you are the type of person that isolates, and you know that you are in this category, I strongly urge you to not isolate and go with positive relationships. And this can be hard for those of us who are still struggling with toxic relationships, right? We're struggling knowing which one's going to be healthy, which one's not. And this is where honesty, and honesty with yourself, like we talked before, I'm going to talk again about this. Honesty with yourself is a key factor, especially with those of us that are still trying to heal that and finding ourselves. So the best way that we can be honest with ourselves and to be able to get out of that isolation period is when you're trying to get out of the isolation, trying to hang out with people to get out of that holiday depression. Just notice yourself after each interaction with each person. Like, for example, for me, for a long time, hanging out with my mom would make me very depressed. Being around my mom made me go into a spiral for like days. It could go up to like 3 days at a time. It would mess with my head. And so there are times where we know ourselves, but not enough to figure out if a person's toxic, but we know ourselves enough to know, I don't like how I'm feeling around this person, but I don't know what it is. So that's where I'm saying, like, be honest with yourself. Like, do you truly enjoy these moments with these people, or do you dread hanging out with them? Don't hang out with those people. Hang out with the people that actually make you feel energized, that actually make you feel loved, that actually make you not question and second guess yourself and make you more insecure after you hang out with them. So, anyway, there's one more thing I wanted to talk about that's a positive thing, because I know like it was kind of depressing reading that Harvard study, being like, oh, so basically Because I had toxic caregivers, then now I'm more prone to these diseases and all of this negative things and depression and bing. But I put another Harvard study of the elasticity of our brain. The whole can't teach an old dog new tricks is false. We have the ability to be able to retrain our brain to have the the positive mindsets, and to be able to basically instill and ingrain healthy rather than toxic. But it does take training like exercise. So these are just key tools and advice for those of us who maybe you're thinking you usually isolate, so you're just going to do that again this year and hibernate until the holidays are over, or you're going to put up with the toxic family like you do every year, and it's just every holiday season becomes this really depressing thing. I encourage you to reevaluate that and to put yourself first, because you deserve to have happy new memories, happy things to look forward to. And some people, including my own family that have been out and not allowed to come home for Christmas, they will plan trips around that time. So it is something to look forward to. But I just keep thinking, like, life is too short to sit here and be depressed. I know it's like, oh, I'm depressed. Amanda says don't be depressed because life's too short. Obviously, it's not that simple. But when you break it down, you deserve to be happy, and you deserve to have the life, the friends, the family, the social circle, and the place and environment that is going to support making you happy and the best version of yourself. And in hindsight, that when you can be the best version of yourself, you can be better for everyone in your life as well. So if you're struggling, um, you're not alone. Definitely not alone. There are so many people that have gone through the same things and are still going through the same things. And if you could try maybe one or two of the things I suggested, maybe that will help. And if not, then I'll just shut up. Okay, sorry. Anyways, love you guys. How was your guys' Thanksgiving? Not isolate, lol, IDK, what that looks like. So you probably isolating resolved a lot of your problems as a kid. Do you agree with that? It is hard though, because it's like to open up and trust someone, you have to be able to be vulnerable, right? But I think that just being honest and real with yourself, because there's been times where I'm like, I don't want to tell people these things because then, if they decide to turn on me or hold it against me. But if you're honest with yourself and you're happy with who you are, and you are who you are and you're unapologetically yourself, whatever information you're telling someone and then they run around and try to use it against you, it's not going to hurt you because you're already like, I said that, and you just double down on who you are. But yeah, it is a life, I feel like, gets a lot easier when you can finally have relationships where you have those strong bonds and you get energized. Like Val, every time I hang out with him, I feel energized afterwards. It feels like therapy. Like I feel so good afterwards. And those are the kind of friendships that I want to surround myself with. Patty says, I tend to stay alone when I get that depressed, so I don't put it off on others and make them depressed as well. And I have this thought a lot of the times. That is what makes me not open up to like my siblings and stuff like that. And for a long time, I would just not answer their calls, not answer their texts until I was the best version of myself. But then I realized that when I opened up to them, they felt happy that I trusted them. Like, and vice versa, when my sisters and my brother I'm talking about Cami, Amanda, Rachel, Cami, Rachel, Esco, when they open up to me and they feel vulnerable with me and they feel safe enough to be vulnerable with me and to be not their best version of their self, and I can help them process it, I feel very grateful that they felt that they could trust me. And it builds your bond even more. So if you look at it that way, maybe it helps. I don't know. it helped me to realize that, like, every time they open up to me, it makes me feel closer to them. And maybe I can't give them, maybe they're not looking for advice, maybe they're just looking for someone to listen, you know? It's not necessarily that I'm here to solve all their problems, but to just be there is something that I will always cherish with my siblings and the ones that are closest with me. My whole family is toxic, maternally and paternally, but online friends are awesome. I love that you've been able to find that, because similarly, like, I didn't think I was able to find a healthy community out here after leaving the order. And I've been so, I hate saying the word blessed, but that's all I can think of right now. I'm just grateful for the community that I've had with all of you. That's the hard thing, though, is like, especially when you're in a situation where it feels like you don't have control of where you're at, finding at least some positive. And I don't like saying hate, but I do hate that sometimes the people that are strangers online are going to be nicer to you than your own blood. And that was one of the things that hurt the most, realizing when I was in the order, like, these strangers want to take me in and take care of me, and my parents want to push me out and never see me again. Like, how is that real? But over time, if you just keep looking to those people, looking for positive people in your life and looking for people that are going to promote healthy lifestyles, healthy boundaries, growth, progress, eventually you're going to find yourself in a completely different place than you were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3, as long as you stay wanting to progress and better your life and become a healthier person, mentally, physically, all of that. I just cut out some toxic people in the last week, Amanda. Crystal, that's hard. I'm sorry. But also congratulations, because it's hard to do that. Some of us think that, again, like, just because they're family or just because, you know, we've had a relationship for X amount of years, like, I can't just cut them off. But if you are growing into the person that is trying to put healthy boundaries up, and here's the thing, usually when you're a person that's becoming more healthy and putting boundaries up, cutting off someone doesn't happen unless that person is constantly disrespecting your boundaries. So I hated, I'm using the word hate a lot today. When I had to cut my mom off, I hated using that verbiage of cutting my mom off, because that's what she did to me, right? So it was like, oh, am I just doing to her what she did to me? And in the reality was, I was putting up boundaries so that we could try to have a healthy relationship, and she was constantly crossing them. I was verbalizing the boundaries. Like, for example, there was a time where I was like, if you come to my house, I will allow you to come to my house, but these are the rules of my home. And it wasn't even that hard, you guys. It wasn't like, clean the home, do the dishes, It was literally just like, basically, we're going to keep the peace of my home, you know? Keep the peace. Not bring up topics in my home that we don't need to bring up. And she's promised and said, yes, I don't even want to bring up that stuff. I just want to spend time with my daughter. And then literally within the same day she showed up to my house, broke those boundaries. And so that was the kind of relationship I had with my mom. Is I would be like, hey, I really would appreciate if you would respect me. And then she'd be like, yeah. And actions speak louder, though. People can say whatever they're going to say, but they're going to do, if they do the action that's against your boundary, that's what you need to listen to. So a lot of the times when we're trying to become healthier and set boundaries, when we cut someone off, it's not that we're cutting them off, they're dead to me just because they said one thing. It's, we put a boundary up, they cross that boundary. And a lot of the times, it's multiple times. We put a boundary up again, they cross it again. We put it up again, cross it again. And so finally we have to be like, look, you really do have to train people how to teach people how to treat you. You got to train them sometimes, because they don't know. People like my mom don't know how to do something healthy. They don't know how to have, and a lot of parents specifically think that because they had the child and they brought the child into the world and now they have ownership. This is weird ownership over the child. Even when the child's an adult, they want to still control them. Hopefully this is phasing out, but it's a very unhealthy, toxic relationship that a lot of parents still have with kids. So we're seeing more and more kids going no contact, kids putting boundaries up, because that's not healthy. It needs to be a mutual respect. Like, how do you expect me to respect you, but you're not respecting me at all? That's a toxic relationship. So, Crystal, I'm proud of you. And I am sure you put up a lot of boundaries that they crossed, and so sadly, inevitably, you had to cut them off. Cutting someone off because they're toxic is different than cutting someone out because they're trying to control you. It's not the same at all. Yeah. Well, it's like, at the end of the day, you're allowed to decide who's in your life and who's not. You're allowed to decide this person's too much for me, or this person's expecting more than I am willing to give. And so honestly, if you have to do that cutting off, it's better for the both of you. Like, I can't give you what you're expecting of me. I can't give you the relationship you're wanting of me. So I'm just going to end it right here. Sorry, I'm like lost. What? Are you guys talking about my Patreon? Does anyone else have an issue with the Patreon being in Spanish? That's the first time I've heard of that. And we just went live on Patreon and I didn't have any of those issues. There must be a setting that, yeah. Sorry, Patty. I honestly, that's the first I've heard of that. So maybe I'll Google it later and see if there's a way to fix that. I went no contact with my father in 2020. We recently resumed contact. He has had 3 visits and everything has went well so far, and I still wait for the ball to drop. Yeah, it's crazy to think like the no contact and cutting someone out sometimes helps the relationship. For example, my mom again, cutting her out and just kind of like giving myself that space to, I don't have to answer your calls. I don't have to, do what you say. This relationship of you expecting me to do these things and to have control over me is not working for me anymore. So I kind of put that wall up, and over time, the respect was given, because when you do that and you put that boundary up, like, look, I'm not going to be at your beck and call. Because as I was saying before, like when she would promise me these things, but then her actions spoke louder, us who have to keep the boundaries up, we need to make sure that our actions speak louder too, because there were times where I was like, hey, if you do this, then I'm going to do this. And then she did it and I didn't follow through. It is kind of like a kid, right? Like raising a kid, like if you tell the kid you're going to do something and then, you don't do it, then their trust in your words is like, right? So, and for someone who's going to be crossing your boundary, if you don't immediately, when that boundary is crossed, the action needs to be exactly in line with your words, so they know that you were serious. And that's how it's been now with my mom. And guess what? She respects the boundaries because I enforced them. But I had to do that no contact, and I had to kind of resituate, like, how do I deal with this relationship when for so long it was her stepping all over my boundaries, and my boundaries don't matter, and my respect is to her. So it's a matter of just reinforcing that, resituating, training your brain to basically be honest with yourself, be honest with her, make sure your actions are in line with your words as well. And then they either respect it or they're not in your life. So in reality, it's not necessarily that you're cutting someone off. It's that if they can't respect you and come to have a healthy relationship with you, then there was no relationship. It's really they have more control than they think, but I don't know, a lot of the times people that have poor boundaries, they're not honest with themselves. I'm gonna describe someone who has poor boundary settings, unhealthy relationships, bad relationship with themselves. They lie to themselves a lot. They don't think that they do, though. They're like, oh, I'm a very honest person, I never lie. But yet they have the same goals, but they've never been able to achieve them for the past 10 years. They make promises to themselves that they're constantly not living up to. They very flaky. I'm describing my old self, by the way. I used to be like this. And I still am working on developing a healthy relationship with myself. But when you don't have that healthy relationship with yourself, you also have poor boundaries with yourself and poor boundaries with other people. You cross other people's boundaries. You don't respect their boundaries because you don't respect your own. You cannot expect someone who doesn't respect themselves to respect you. So if you get nothing out of this video but this this is what I want you to take home with you to Santa Claus for Christmas. Cole, trust yourself and respect yourself. Learn who you are so that you can understand what trusting yourself looks like and respecting yourself looks like. Damn, Amanda calling me out. Hey, I'm calling myself out, okay? Emily's here. Hi, Emily. Emily is Emily, I thought of you when I was doing my research for this video, and how a lot of people, I don't know if you necessarily do this with Christmas time, but I know that you and I bonded over like isolation. Emily helped me a lot through some of the times where I was just isolating when I was depressed. But yeah, you came to mind a lot with this video preparation, because I remember isolating was a very big part of my life when I was struggling, because I just didn't want to be a burden to other people. But the reality is, the people in your life who love you, you're not going to burden them with your presence. If someone in your life loves you, but they're burdened with your presence, that may not be love. So surrounding yourself with people who are happy to have you, who are happy to be burdened with your presence when you're, choosing, should I go open up to a friend or isolate? They're going to be the ones that are, no, open up to me, don't isolate. Those are the ones you want in your circle. So thank you, Emily. I really was thinking a lot about you today. I'm like, remember having those conversations about isolation? And I was defending isolation, like, well, I'm going to isolate and then I'll come back to the world. But sometimes isolating makes it worse. Actually, most times isolating makes it worse. The quicker we can talk to a trusted person, even if it's just a therapist, like even if that's the only person you trust is a therapist, that's better than isolating and trying to, white knuckle it through your depression. Oh, thank you, Crystal. You're so sweet. What's the sorry, what are you? I can't see your comment. What is the longest you've gone before saying the L word? Love? This is an interesting subject. I have been doing a lot of therapy on love, because I think that some of my relationships where I said I love you, it wasn't actually love. And this sounds kind of messed up, but you can only love to the extent that you understand or comprehend. And sometimes I think that we mistake love for, because again, on the topic of not knowing yourself, when you love someone, right? To love someone, what is the definition of that? You can love the idea of them, you can love the version of them that you think that they are, but I think there have been some relationships where I never truly even knew that person because they didn't know themselves. So what was I loving, right? Isn't that a weird thing to think about? Like, I love this person so much, but yet they were lying and curating this version of themselves that wasn't even real. Kind of like when Brenda was talking about how she doesn't think that her mom ever loved her, or she never felt that love. She doesn't even know who her mom is, but she assumes that she would love the version of her mom that is not in survival mode. It's kind of like that. Like, you can have love for someone, but also to love someone, do you need to know who they are to love them, to fully love them? Do you need to understand that? I don't know, because with, again, looking at my past relationships, some of them are like, I loved you, and I said I loved you because I thought that I knew who you were, and then coming to find out you were lying about who you were, so I loved the lies, I guess. So don't ask me a question on love, because that one's, I think that everyone has a different definition of love, and I think that it's all on the spectrum of your own love for yourself. The deeper that you love yourself is the deeper you can love others. And the more you can get to know yourself, the better you are going to be at getting to know other people. So the L word, that's a tricky one. A lot of people say that you shouldn't say love until 3 months into the relationship. Have you guys heard this one? Which, I don't know. I think that every relationship's different, but if you are feeling pressure to say love you, or if you feel like the other person's saying love you too soon, then trust yourself. You're probably right. I don't know why this is bringing up, when I was on Amber Rose's podcast, she was all talking about how she was like, this guy was saying that he loves her, and she's like, you don't effing love me, you barely even know me. But I was bonding with her about how the love bombing stage, when guys will love bomb you, it feels so good and so nice, but it's not real, because no one can love you and be in love with you when they don't even know you. That is a disorder that they're having within themselves, of like, not just disorder, but like a emotional attachment that they're trying to. Sometimes I think that people want so badly to be loved by someone else because they don't love themselves, and so then they get into these toxic relationships thinking that if I can convince this person to love me, then maybe I can love me. And that's not healthy, because then they also they'll curate a version of themselves that they think this other person's going to love, so that they can get that validation that they can't find within themselves. I want to do a whole episode on this topic of love, because I've learned a lot about myself over the years, and how I showed love in the past versus now, and the need for a relationship that society, like, I just saw this post on Instagram that was like, one in four people will be single for their entire life. And I keep thinking about, I'm like, why do people look at that as such a negative thing? It's because in our brains we're convinced that we have to have a partner to feel loved. And is it because we don't love ourselves, so we have to have that partner so that we can be whole, because we're not whole within ourselves? Is this a problem within the entire world, that a lot of people feel that they're not complete unless they find their other half, because they feel so empty with themselves? Sometimes, for me, actually, most of the time, or all the time actually, since I've been single for, I want to say since January. Is that the last relationship? January. It's the happiest I've ever been. There's been roller coasters, right, with therapy and like learning and growing and healing, but to be able to love yourself is, I think that everyone needs to learn that before getting into a relationship. And I think that there's a lot of people who are married their entire life, but they hate the relationship. That's worse than being single forever. Oop, I'm the 1 in 4. Me too. Anyway, I was going to say something that I maybe should say for Patreon. By the way, anyone who wants to be on the Patreon, I should put it in the description box down below, but if you do Amanda Ray Patreon, I should pop up. And we do lives every week. Except for last week, because I was a little bit depressed because of the holidays. I talk about it on Patreon. If you want to know more. If you want to know more about my depression, you're going to have to pay for it. What did Val say? Love me for me, or don't love me at all. But at night, when I was hanging out with Val, he said that, and I laughed so hard. He's like, sometimes I'm just like, love me for me or don't love me at all. And then at night when I'm alone and sad, I'm like, why doesn't anybody love me for me? But it is true. No, you should not be allowing anyone into your life that's not going to love you for you. Because what do they do in there? How did they get in there? Like, love me for me. I love myself. I just don't want to be lonely. But you're never alone when you're with yourself, because you're there. Wherever you go, there you are. You don't need a man. No, I want a woman now. I'm switching to the other side. Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I don't want a relationship. I need for myself to do a few things with myself and be alone. And I'm finally embracing that. And I'm enjoying that. Thank you. Good night. All I ever wanted was to be in love, in a loving relationship. And I don't think I ever had a partner that loved me, because I wanted it so much. I convinced myself if I loved, I would then be loved. No. Have you heard of the concept of if you're desperate for love, it will never find you? What was that quote? if you chase something, if you chase a butterfly, it's going to fly away. But if you create the flowers and the environment that's healthy, the butterfly will come to the garden, right? So in a sense, if you just create the healthy environment that supports healthy relationships, another healthy person's going to come in and see it and enjoy it and love it, and you don't have to convince that person how great it is. They will see it for what it is. Does that make sense? You shouldn't have to force love. That's not love. I just did a live before this, so I'm kind of like talked out a little bit. But I hope that this video has given you guys a little bit of an upper, right? A little bit of a happy look on the holidays, even if it's alone. There's so many fun things you can do all by yourself. And if it's spent with family, then that's great too. Like, whatever is going to be a positive thing for yourself is what you should be doing. Life's too short to be living it for others. Honestly, that's silly. Sometimes when I talk about it like that, I'm like, well, that's kind of narcissistic. You want to put yourself first. I'm like, well, it's in a different lighting. A narcissist puts themselves first because they think they're better than everyone, but putting yourself first because it's a place of love and you're loving yourself so you can love others and come as your best version of yourself for others as well, that's different. There's a huge difference. Loving yourself to feel whole and confident and healthy, that's not narcissism. Narcissists put themselves first, but they don't actually love themselves, and that's why they're not capable of loving other people. They only can really love you for what you can do for them. Amanda, how did you get over seeking male validation in a relationship? You always have such good questions. I had a really hard time with seeking male validation when I first left the order, and I think it was a big part, even while I was in the order, seeking male validation, because a big part was my dad not getting his validation, not getting his love, and I was like, just wanting to be loved, kind of like what I described, like if someone else can love me, then maybe I'm worth loving, kind of a thing. But it was a very toxic, needing that validation, which is not healthy. And you can't have I don't think you can ever really have a healthy relationship if you're needing someone else's validation way more than your own, because then you're trusting someone else over your own self, which if you're going to live in this life, in this body, you need to trust this person. You can't trust someone else over you to know what's best for you, right? So I think for me, it took a long time, and I still go back and forth with being like, wait a minute, why do I want that person to like me? Why do I want that person's validation so much? Like, I am at the point now where I see when I'm seeking validation, and then I come back to myself and I'm like, where's this deep rooted from? And it's usually a childhood trauma. So I think that honestly, it was a slow healing journey. And then after my divorce, it was still slow. But then when I was having the relationship with myself this year, the healing was a lot faster because there was nothing else distracting from just loving myself, getting to know myself, trusting myself, and getting the validation from myself. You just really have to value your relationship with yourself the most. You really have to learn how awesome you are. And I think in the past I was running from myself. I really didn't like myself. I remember looking in the mirror crying, being like, if I knew that bitch, I wouldn't even like her. Like, if I met her at work, I would hate her. And I was crying. But I've come a long way. Thank you for all of the great questions. You guys are always so... I feel like I learned something from myself every single live stream. My dad told me that he didn't love me, he didn't hate. I was just here, and that was a fact he could not change. Damn, how did that make you feel? We have this like just unwavering want to have our parents' approval when we're kids, or our parents' love, right? We want that so badly, and so to realize sometimes for a lot of us the hard truth is that I don't think that they ever really truly loved me, or they didn't love me for me. They loved me for what they wanted me to be or what I could do for them. It's a hard pill to swallow. And the sad thing is, when we have parents like this, parents that only love us for what we can do for them, we will sometimes, if we don't do the work, inner work on ourselves, we will end up in relationships where we are with someone who only loves us for what we can do for them as well. Repeating what our parents did to us, and now we're married to that. We're, in a committed relationship with that. So it really is going to keep biting you in the ass if you don't work through it. I was talking to one of my cousins the other day. I was like, if you don't work through your childhood trauma, you're gonna struggle with relationships as an adult. And he's like, I know, but I don't want to work through it. And I was like, okay, as long as you don't want relationships, then you're golden. Amanda, you have come such a long way, and I'm happy to get to see you keep moving forward. Thank you, Emily. I actually look back on my younger self, like fresh out of the divorce, freshly to Vegas. There was a lot of toxic traits that I had and that I had to like shed. And I ran from doing the inner work because it's easier. Just like my cousin that was like, well, I don't want to do the work on healing myself and looking deeper into my childhood trauma. It's easier to just run, but in the long run, you're going to regret running because you realize why all of these issues were happening. You're like, why is all this trauma and toxicity following me? Oh, it's me. So really just getting to the root of it all. But you also have to make sure you're in a safe enough space to dissect it all. When you're in a traumatic lifestyle, your home life is traumatic, it's hard to also then dissect the other trauma from your childhood. You have to finally be in a place where you can heal and start to finally heal those wounds. Then you can open up the Narnia into your childhood trauma and start healing that. My dad never messed with my head, but my mother did many, many times. And you know what's scary about that? Then once you're out of the home, you start to be the one messing with your head because it's your mom's voice. I hated learning that. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm like, hate my mom. I went through a period of hating my mom. Like, I hate my mom so much, yet I am my mother because all the self-criticizing thoughts, that was from my childhood. Those are the voices that were being talked at me my whole childhood. Now I'm carrying it on with me, even though my mom's not a part of my life. So it really just takes a lot of dissecting who you are, and it can be emotionally draining to do because it's your identity, or at least you think it is, right? You think that you're just this critical person. You think that you're just this person that likes to isolate, but a lot of it is trauma responses. And do you need to make that hard decision of, do I want to claim these as a personality trait, even though they don't help me in any way, shape, or form? That's just who I am. And then I just deal with it for the rest of my life? Or am I willing to dissect each piece of myself, kind of like a brick wall, like pulling the bricks out and looking at each one, does this serve me, or does this actually make my life harder? It is a lot of work, but in the long run, you don't have to do the work anymore. At some point, the work is less and less. It's kind of like your room's messy, but if you just sit there and just ignore the mess, you can live in the mess, but you have to come to terms with living in the mess. Stinky, gross, you know what I mean? So if you just start to clean the mess, over time, when it gets dirty again, it'll be easier to clean because you really did the deep cleaning. So now you can live with the benefits. I don't know why I always do, I always have to do, it's not parables, analogies. Like, I'm like dumbing it down, but it also is like, it helps me to think of it that way. So I'm like, oh, it is a benefit if I actually do it. And I think that being raised in a cult for 17 years, Paul Kingston, the leader, was always talking about parables. I just lost the word again. Analogies. One time he told this analogy that I still to this day can't remember why he was telling it, but he was going into depth about how the male duck is a beautiful duck with the green feathers, and it's so beautiful, and the female duck's kind of ugly, but it's because the female duck needs to camouflage, and the male duck needs to like get the hunter's attention to get him away from the female and the babies. And that analogy was used for something important that I never remembered. You're welcome. Guess his brainwashing didn't work that good. Deep cleaning first, then spot cleaning. Yep. Huh? Everyone's like, what the F? I can't remember what it was. If anyone from the order remembers him using that analogy, I feel like he used it a lot. Tell me what it meant for him. Another analogy was, I know it doesn't make sense, your place in the order and why you're doing, 10% for, like basically all the things that we have to just blindly do. He's like, but, if all the parts of a car were questioning why that one part works, it doesn't make sense. But when they're all just doing what they're supposed to do, then the car can work. So as a kid, you're like, oh, so if I just blindly follow, then things will just work out. And I won't understand why, but the car will run. What? That was basically my entire childhood. I was always confused. And then when I was asking questions, then I never got the answers. I was like more confused than when I asked the question. Ducks are R-wordy. Oh, yeah, I learned that the hard way when I lived at an apartment complex that had a bunch of ducklings. Are so cute, but the male ducks don't want too many male ducklings. Paul probably really did study ducks because he takes after them. They would drown the male ducklings so that there wouldn't be a lot of competition for the female ducks. And then if there was a weak duck, they would trample it and feather, like pluck its feathers. Like they were brutal. And yes, they were R-wordy. I think Paul was raised by ducks, you guys. Analogies aren't always true. You can come up with an analogy just for anything you want. It's true. You're right. And that's what Paul did. And I hate that I do it too. Blindly following never works out. Exactly. To live a life where you're not living your truth and you're just blindly following, you never get to really know who you are, and you never really get to live your life to the fullest because you're not living your life. You're following blindly in someone else's footsteps and what someone else is telling you to do. Thank you, Susan. You are amazing. I've been watching you from the beginning. Your growth and ability to explain how to find a new path towards self-growth and empowerment to encourage others to live their best life. Thank you. Sometimes I don't do the best job at it, but I try. And I find that the thing that's benefited the most is just being honest about my journey. Being raw and real about my journey to myself and to you guys, and you guys can take the pieces that help you, and I take what helps me, and we leave the rest. Anyway, this has been fun. If you guys need a little extra support on the holiday season, definitely recommend phoning a trusted friend, therapy, taking that extra care for yourself in these times where you need it. Making sure the first thing you do that day, every day, is either like exercising, something you enjoy, talking kind to yourself in the mirror. Just every single day, try to do something that's just that extra care for you in the times where you struggle naturally. And if you need more positive advice on it, I linked 2 videos down below, and I'll be here on Patreon tomorrow and Culty Cup of Coffee every Sunday. So thank you guys so much for joining and listening and giving your good advice, as well as just being honest and real and asking your amazing questions. I love you guys. Bye, Crystal. Bye, Clive. Bye, Ozzy. Bye, Jenna. Bye, Darcy. Bye, Kaya. Bye, 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 bye. Merry Christmas.